Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear viewers, I welcome you all on lecture number 10 on the topic of contemporary principles of interpretation. Dear friends, my name is Dr. Ajay Sonavne, Assistant Professor, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. So today we will be discussing certain contemporary principles of interpretation that has come out from the judiciary on various occasions in these recent times. So today we are going to cover certain topics such as what is the idea of constitutionalism in India and emerge in the backdrop of the transformative constitutionalism. So the transformative constitutionalism is such wherein the society has transformed and according to the interpretation that has brought a new way and new perspective over the time as per the changes in the society. Further, we will also see the concept of morality in the backdrop of constitutional morality, because that is again a recent development that has taken place, and also however that development is not recent per se or recent technically, but that word has already been referred from the Constituent Assembly debates, but still the importance or the significance that it gained in the recent times, that is something which need to be understood and which is something helpful for the contemporary principles of interpretation of statutes. So to start with, our first slide, which deals with the transformative constitutionalism and overview. So here when we talk about transformative constitutionalism, first we have to understand that how the society has transformed, because when we talk about the transformation and thus there are certain elements in the society which transform the society from every time, maybe from their culture, maybe from their tradition, maybe from their moral principles. So that basically led towards the changing perspective of everyone from one right thing to the another right thing. So it may be like such that whatever may be the right at one particular time may not be right on another particular time, or vice versa, whatever may be the right, whatever may not be the right earlier time, but now it may be considered as the right one. So here the creation of just society through a social transformation is very important, because the way people start changing their thinking, or the way people have started to adapt new things or to consider new things as per the development in the science and technology, or as per the development in the certain moral principles, then according to that the society has to become a just is nothing but the word here used, the just society, wherein the people should be mature enough, people should be mature enough to understand the new principles, to new moral principles, and accordingly they should adopt that new moral principles and they shall maintain the social order in the society. And this is nothing but the transformation that generally takes place in the society, because if we take an example like India, wherein there are certain principles in the year like 1950 or 1960 or 1970, or for that matter in the pre-independence era, certain principles might not be moral at that time, but now after like 20th century or in this 21st century, there are several principles who became a moral principles, and then that moral principles got a value not only in the society but also sometimes at the legal parlance. So therefore when we talk about the transformation, then generally four important principles that we take into consideration, that is individual, whose certain basic fundamental principles such as right to life and personal liberty, equality, and also the dignity of person, that has keeps changing as per the time and as per the scenario. So therefore the term constitutionalism that we hear several times, wherein it is nothing but it defines what is the power functions of the state, what is the power, what is the limitation of the power functions of the state, plus what is the philosophy behind following the constitution, what is the philosophy behind following the principles of the several chapters of the constitution, and also the laws associated with that. But at the same time, this philosophy of constitutionalism that has now expanded when there is a term which has been evolved, that is transformative constitutionalism. So the transformative constitutionalism, as if you just see the terminology, it simply shows that the constitutionalism philosophy has now become or has got a new phase which is associated with some transformation, and that transformation is where that is transformation in the society, and therefore the transformation has come in the law, and equally that has come into the interpretation of the judiciary, and that is also one of the aspect of contemporary principle of interpretation. So here if you see the definition of transformative constitutionalism, the Clare defines transformative constitutionalism as a long-term project of a constitutional enactment, interpretation and enforcement committed to transforming a country's political and social institutions and power relationships in a democratic, participatory and egalitarian direction. Right. So here if you see this definition that is given by Clare of this terminology of transformative constitutionalism. So it is a long-term project of constitutional enactment, interpretation and enforcement committed to transforming country's political and social institution. So why this has been mentioned? Because here if you see that, as I mentioned, like what was correct in 1950 and what may be correct like in after like in 21st century. So both things are very different, or both things are very different in taking into consideration, because it is a long term project, because every year or every month or maybe every day or like every generation they have a different perspective to look at certain things. So like in today's scenario, because of the technology, the communication has been changed. Because of the technology, the sharing of information has been changed, conversation has been changed. Even for that matter, the judicial proceedings, even that has turn into the certain sometimes into the online mode, wherein the online mediation process that has been started. So things have changed and people have adopted that particular perspective. So here it is a long term project, because this process, that change has not occurred at one day or one time. It took time, and then people generally start accepting that, and then finally after accepting that, when that become a part of our daily routine life, then sometimes issues and challenges come, and then court has to think from that perspective that this is a new transformation that has come in the society, people have adopted that, and then this is issues and challenges. So that transformation is not in the only in the daily routine, but also that reflects in the enactments, that reflects in the interpretation, that reflects in the enforcement of law. So therefore we call it as a, earlier it was a conservative perspective towards the life of individual, or even towards the moral principles of the individuals or the society at large, but now that has now changed to the modernism, that has changed to the modern perspective or modern principles that were adopted by the people in the generally in the society, and therefore that continuity in application to bring the social order. Because generally when we are changing our perspective from conservatism to the modernism, then obviously there are people who may not adopt each and everything, or even the judges, or even their philosophy or their ideas or beliefs to accept that particular change, or that modernism change is sometimes becomes very critical. So therefore it requires that there should be a continuous application, continuous adaptation of such new principles which are helpful, which are useful, or which are common for all, and that brings the social order in the society. So therefore it is the time that has now come that to rebuild a new society with social change, and that will lead to the social justice. Because ultimately if you do not make your stand or pace with the upcoming generation, or you can say new transformation in the society, then obviously that will not be helpful. Because as a judge, for example, if he is going to interpret the law as it is, which is there in that statute which was enacted maybe 100 year back, but in today's scenario, in the 21st century, the judge has to give a new interpretation, judge has to give the contemporary interpretation which is suitable in that respective society, which is suitable in that respective state or the mindset of the people. Otherwise the judgment will have a no value, or judgment may be not able to execute in a proper manner. So moving further, therefore it is a development that needs to happen, that it is necessary that judicial consciousness of historical background shall be in consonance with the present social political situation to redress new challenges. Because here the judge has to make balance between historical background and as well as the present social political situation. Because this judicial conscience, or this judicial conscience which is reflect into their contemporary interpretation, that basically helps to make, or that judges has to make the balance between both of them. Because even this idea was enlarged, or that was developed in the American legal realism theory of the jurisprudence, wherein they believe that judges, one type of judges, that they believe that the law has to be interpreted, yes, as per the statute, but also take into consideration the what is happening in the society, what are the social, political, economical, historical developments that are there in the society. So law has to be interpreted, take into consideration both the ideas, that is, one is the law, that is law which is mentioned in the statute, and also the development that is taking place in the society, and the how the people have changed their perspective towards the older things, and now they have how they are adopting a new things. So accordingly, judge has to develop their judicial consciousness. In addition, it is necessary, demands less incidence on legal procedural technicalities, otherwise quite often that defeat the enforcement of substantive rights. So also now time has come wherein when you talk about the interpreting the law, maybe the procedural law, then sometimes there is a need to have certain flexibility, there is need to maintain certain flexibility, especially therefore we have a parallel judicial, or you can say institution such as a tribunal, which wherein the people may not have to go for the strict or rigid procedure that has been followed by the ages under the modern judicial system, but now under the traditional judicial system, but now we have this modern judicial system that is in the form of tribunal, wherein the certain legal and procedural technicalities have given some liberty, has given some flexibility. We are more focusing upon the protecting the rights of the individual. Otherwise, if we just stick to the rigid or the non-flexible procedural laws, then that will not sometimes give the result in a better manner. Then further, the contemporary or dominant approach to constitutional interpretation is of a living tree, because it's like it will keep growing, it will keep enhancing, it will keep, you can say, developing, because it is not like one day process, because in future, or looking at the future demand, or looking at the future challenges, how the law will grow, or how the people will understand the law, or how the judges will interpret the law, that is continuous process. And therefore, for that matter, it is like a living tree wherein the constitution, wherein the constitution that will helpful for developing this, or for accepting such kind of interpretation. So the constitution therefore is treated as a evolving document, and the judges bearing the responsibility of updating it so that it can keep a pace with changing times. And it does not guarantee, right, this is very important point, that it does not guarantee or state itself a correct interpretation or superior interpretation, because what is, when if the judiciary has, with their deliberation, with their discussion, if they have come out with some transformative or new interpretation, right, by adopting the present scenario, but that may not be the final one, that may not be the that may not be considered as the final interpretation, or the superior interpretation, or the correct interpretation for all the time or permanent time. Because here, if tomorrow again society changes, if tomorrow again people start thinking that no, this is not the correct way at this particular position after 100 years for that matter, then after 100 years judge may come out with the new principle. Because if you just take a simple example, that people who are from rural area, if they are transferring to the urban area, but again they are sometimes go back to their roots, maybe just to have a peaceful life, or you can say the peaceful structure of life. So similarly, that change that may come back in a reverse manner in future. So therefore, what has been interpreted today by the judiciary may not be final one, that may be suitable at the present time, but for the future time it has to again undergo the transformation, it has to again undergo again has to brought a new change. So however, the adaptation or recognition of new changes is equally necessary. So now here let us try to understand that what are the elements that basically helps to interpret the new challenges, or that elements that basically help us to bring the transformation, or that accept the transformation and interpret the law. So if we look from the law point of view, then certain constitution aspects such as the preamble, wherein we see that we the people, then idea of secularism, then fundamental right, then directive principle of state policy, then these principles, and even for that matter fundamental duties also, or the other aspect of preamble. So these are certain elements wherein if the parliament makes the law, if parliament is enacting certain law, or even the judiciary is trying to understand the intention of the legislature behind making that law, and also how the society is accepting that law, then these principles basically are such that they are keep evolving, they are keep interpreting in a transformative manner, they keep interpreting in such a manner that something new will come out, or something that is present new in today's scenario that can be adopted and that can be match with this principles or with these elements of the constitution. So like for example, if you talk about fundamental rights, then under the fundamental rights there are several rights that has been recognized by the court, because court here or judiciary has not only restricted themselves to the words of the constitution or words of the article 21 or article 19 or article 14. The judiciary has come out with several interpretation or several transformative interpretation wherein the court has recognized a fundamental right which was not existed in the chapter 3 of the constitution, but they have evolved, or part 3 of the constitution, but they have evolved with the new rights with the interpretation. So for example, right to life and personal liberty, which is there under article 21. So that is inclusive of right to education, wherein the every child to develop or to grow, or even as a fundamental right, he should get a free and compulsory education, which was again extended with the article 21A. That amendment was done. Similarly, directive principle of state policy, wherein the article 38 of the constitution, which talks about welfare of all and which talks about the collectivism. So here the state has a certain responsibility that whenever they will take any scheme or bring out any scheme, then they should have that research in their hand, that what is required in the society and how that necessary things can be brought for the help which is brought or which can be brought out for the assistance of the members of the society. So these are certain elements that are keep growing, that will keep developing, and it's like as mentioned earlier, like it's like a living tree, it will keep increasing. And here there are certain instances wherein which widen the scope of interpretation as per the time change or as per the time that is evolved. So here there is a instances such as the recognition of fundamental rights. So for example, like under the part 3 of the constitution, we have a chapter that deals with the fundamental rights, and under that chapter, like from article 12 to article 35, that deals with the certain aspects of fundamental rights. But also that clearly gives us the idea that what is which are the category or the types of fundamental rights. So for example, there is a right to equality, there is a right to life, personal liberty, freedom of speech and expression, freedom of religion, then there is a freedom or right to have a minority institution, or right to have certain constitutional remedies. So these are certain rights that definitely are there, but the court has recognized certain rights out of that interpretation, out of the interpretation of part 3 of the constitution. So for example, there is a right to travel abroad, then there is a right to have the clean environment, right to have a food, right to have a your own identity, respect, dignity. So these rights or these words you may not find in the chapter or in the part 3 of the constitution, but the court has recognized those rights through their innovative interpretation, or the time as and when the case came before the court tried to interpret the words of the constitution or the part 3 of the constitution in such a manner that these rights are already existence in the society. We have just recognized them, and now we are trying to protect them, or we are trying to enforce them with the help of law. So recognition of fundamental right is basically you can say I would say recognition of contemporary fundamental rights, because right now, for example, like before 40 or 50 years, no one would have thought that there should be a right to access the internet. So now there is a right to access to internet has become a, you can say, mandatory or something which is very daily need of everyone's life. So therefore, this is like a recognition of new fundamental rights, and that has come out with the transformation that has come in the society. Then social action litigation, that is nothing but the public interest litigation, and which is also termed as a social action litigation. This is also a transformation that has brought by the judiciary, wherein it is not only restricted to the whoever person is injured, he can approach to the court or she can approach to the court, but the person who is injured and unable to approach to the court, then a third person who is on his behalf can approach to the court and try to get the justice to such individual, or even for that matter the court themselves can take a suo motu action if they find such issue that is happening in the society. And this social action litigation is not merely for one individual. Here you can see it is the social action, that is combined group rights can be recognized, can be protected, such as the right to environment, for example, right to clean environment. It is nothing but a group right which needs to be protected, recognized, and also the enforced by the law. Then there is a principle like right to privacy, which is again recognized by the court through the their own interpretation. And the concept like morality, when we discuss here, the morality is like, as you know, that this is not something that no, which is a static concept. It keeps evolving, it keeps changing as per the time. And when it comes to the morality, the famous statement can be relevant here, that change is the only constant. So when we talk about morality, the morality will keep changing, and that change is also always the constant. But at the same time, what is moral for one person may not be moral for another person, or what is moral in India, for example, may not be moral in another country, or what is moral in another country may not moral in Indian country. So this vast interpretation of morality that we need to adopt, or we need to keep in mind. And also while interpreting the law, the judiciary has to keep that aspect in their mind, that whether any challenge that has come before them, whether it is within the moral principles or not, because that will also give the different direction to their interpretation. Because this morality is not only the term which is philosophically we are referring, but also constitution recognize this term morality at the several occasions. So just for example, like Article 25, the freedom of religion, yes, it is a right that is given to every individual, but that is subject to three exception. That is one, subject to the public health, order, and morality. So Article 25 itself is subject to the concept of morality. Then abolition of triple talaq or rights of LGBT. So these are nothing but the new interpretation as per the changing time, wherein the fundamental rights that have been superseded over the customary principles which were already existence from the long term. So let us take certain examples wherein how the judiciary has come up with some new interpretation, and how they have changed or make a big impact to changing the society with their new approach or with their new interpretation. And that obviously a part and parcel of or the principles or the contemporary principles of interpretation. So there is this first case, that is Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India. Here the Supreme Court with the 9 judges bench has unanimously declared that right to privacy is a fundamental right intrinsic in the right to life and personal liberty, that is under the Article 21. Because here when we talk about privacy, then this word privacy, where it is located in this right to life and personal liberty, because the word privacy the court found out in the term personal liberty, because under the personal liberty, and because there may be a two type of liberty, one is the liberty that is for the society, that is against the society, against the state, or against the country. But there is a personal liberty, that is personal is nothing but that is within the individual space or within our own space, how we are going to enjoy our freedom, how we are going to enjoy our life, that is one's own decision. So therefore right to privacy is fundamental right intrinsic in the right to life and personal liberty. So here just to take back to this particular decision, that is the stand of Supreme Court. Like in the earlier there was one Khadak Singh case, wherein in the Khadak Singh case the Supreme Court had a different perspective, because that case was decided by the Supreme Court in the 1950s, 1951. So in that era the right to privacy was not considered as a fundamental right, because the society, how the society has changed, how the society has a different perspective at that time. So that was not suitable to declare the right to privacy as a fundamental right. But now with the transformation that happened in the society, the court has to give the contemporary interpretation, and that is nothing but the right to privacy is now considered as a fundamental right. So in this case court has also mentioned that life and personal liberty are inalienable rights, that is nothing but the non-transferable rights. These rights inseparable from dignified human existence. Okay, so to get a dignified life or to have the dignity, respect in the life, these rights cannot be taken away from the individual. And the dignity of individual, equality between human beings, and the quest for liberty are the foundational pillars of the Indian Constitution. Again, these three principles are again keep evolving as per the time, as per the scenario, and as per the changes in the society. So an invasion of life and personal liberty must meet threefold requirement, that is, one, legality, which postulates the existence of law; second, need, which define in terms of legitimate state; and third, proportionality, which ensures a rational nexus between objects and means adopted to achieve them. Because legality, that is definitely we do apply or we do follow, we do adhere to, or as a citizen of India we respect it. But again, the need is again the something that judiciary has to taken care of. But when it comes to the proportionality, now this is something which is again very vast, you can say, area wherein the whatever the law has been declared by the legislature, whether it is achieving the object which is sought to be achieved, or whatever the when the judiciary is going to interpret that law, again the judiciary has to keep in mind that what is the object and what is the mischief or the you can say discrimination that has been done, for example, then whether it is proportionate, whether they are going to achieve the object or not. So this object and the means adopted to achieve them, there has to be a rational nexus between that. Then and then only we can balance that fundamental right in a correct manner. Then again there is a second case, that is Shaira Bano versus Union of India, wherein the petitioner Shaira Bano had approached to the court for assailing the divorce pronounced by her husband as per the practice of talaq-e-bidda, that is triple talaq. Then her contention was that to declare the divorce pronounced by her husband to be void ab initio because it is violative to the fundamental rights contained under Article 4 of the Constitution. So here in this again landmark judgment, and again the interpretation of court, which was, you can say, progressive in nature, wherein the court has in the majority 3-2 declare that the practice of triple talaq had to be violative of fundamental right contained under Article 14 of the Constitution, and hence it is declared as unconstitutional. So here what we can again, you can say, understood or take away is that is nothing but that the customary practices or in the religion wherein the particular practice which has been followed from the, you can say, from generation to generation, from the immemorial time, then again we have to understand that whether that practice is leading to the violation of fundamental right. Like there was a practice of sati, again the Constitution abolished this practice of sati. Then similarly, like if this particular process of divorce, if it is violating the basic fundamental rights of the individual, then again such new interpretation, by giving the new interpretation or by giving the interpretation which is within the framework of the Constitution, but again just to protect the fundamental rights of the woman, one may, or the judges basically has declared here the such practice as the invalid one, just to protect the fundamental right, that is Article 14 of the Constitution. Then there is one more example we have here, that is Navtej Singh Johar others versus Union of India 2018 Supreme Court case. So again in this case the 5 judges bench unanimously declared that 377, the earlier IPC, as an unconstitutional insofar as it criminalized the consensual sexual acts between adults in private, whether homosexual or of heterosexual. So here court viewed the Constitution as a great social document, almost revolutionary in its aim of transforming a medieval hierarchical into a modern egalitarian democracy. So this is again nothing but the perspective of the court. Look at the Constitution, that how organically living document it is and how transformative document it is, and accordingly even court has to see that how they have to interpret that as per the changing time and society. And therefore in this case also there is a observation, that is Chief Justice Deepak Mishra and along with the Justice Khanwilkar observed that section 377 of IPC in its present form being violative of right to dignity and right to privacy, and has to be tested both on the pedestal of Article 14 and Article 19 of the Constitution as per the law laid down in Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India and other later authorities, because the time has come wherein to understand that if the sections of a particular statutes are violative of the basic fundamental rights, then again that section shall not have the value to be in existence, or that can be declared as invalid as per the article again 13 of the constitution, wherein if the law is declared by the parliament or the state legislature, if it is violative of the fundamental right, then such law will be declared as the invalid one. Then again there is another case wherein the Jyoti George versus State of Maharashtra, wherein the Supreme Court through the judgment represents the clearest and most coherent example of judicial resistance to an almost overwhelming trend in Indian constitutional jurisprudence, and the court's willingness to endorse laws that severely curtail civil liberties by citing the exceptional situation. Then there is one more case which is again landmark case and which has also changed the perspective of the interpretation, wherein the Joseph Shine versus Union of India. Now in this case the Supreme Court struck down the section 497 of this earlier IPC, that is adultery is no longer of offense now, and while testing the constitutionality of section 497, the court held that the section 497 of IPC lacks an adequately determining principle to criminalize consensual sexual activity and is manifestly arbitrary. So here Supreme Court has laid down certain good observation, wherein why the section 497 is basically shall be considered as not a crime, adultery not a crime. So section 497 is denial of substantive equality, as it perpetuates the subordinate status ascribed to women in marriage and society. So therefore section 497 basically violates the article 14 of the constitution. Then further section 497 is based on gender stereotypes about the role of woman and violates the non-discrimination principle embodied in article 15 of the constitution. Further, section 497 is also denial of constitutional guarantee of dignity, liberty, privacy, sexual autonomy, which are intrinsic to the article 21 of the constitution. Supreme Court called the law unconstitutional because it treats a husband as the master, and therefore the court held that any provision of law affecting the individual dignity and equality of woman invites the wrath of the constitution. And it's time to say that husband is not a master of wife, and legal sovereignty of one sex over the other sex is wrong. So therefore this is observation, and as you can see the interpretation and the perspective of the court, because of the changing time or the changing nature or the changing the lifestyle, you can say, or how the woman has become empowered, and accordingly how the constitution has to adopt the principle like dignity, respect, or their basic fundamental right in such a manner that can give the new ways for the hope of the individual. So let us now come to another principle, that is constitutional morality. This is again another principle which is again gained a momentum in the recent times, and that has also helped for the interpretation of the several statutes, and not only the statute but also the administrative action of the government, and not only the administrative action but also the three organs that we have, legislature, executive, and also the judiciary, all have to adopt this principle of constitutional morality. So now we will discuss the another important principle of the transformative, or you can say the contemporary principle of the interpretation, and this is, however, this principle of constitutional morality is not a very recent, it is already a principle which was already discussed in the Constituent Assembly debate, but in the recent time it has got a new momentum. So as we know that Constitution of India is the supreme law of the land, and we all have to abide by the principles of the Constitution or the laws that is associated in the Constitution, and also the features of the Constitution such as fundamental rights including the speech, religion, assembly, property rights now, which has been recently removed. But the Constitution and the purpose and the object that upholding that these fundamental rights has a value above and beyond personal interest and national security concern. Now, why this is mentioned here is that when fundamental rights that are enshrined in our constitution, or when they have been now a part of our constitution, then if we see that fundamental rights from three perspectives, that is from legislative perspective, from executive perspective, or from the judicial perspective, and the fourth one, that is from individual perspective. So as a organ of the state, that is legislature, executive, and judiciary, and as an individual being the citizen of India, then everyone has certain responsibility towards respecting that fundamental rights, towards maintaining the fundamental rights values, and also to see that as a duty that how they can protect that fundamental rights, or how they cannot violate the fundamental rights. So therefore these values are nothing but the values that we need to keep, so that that constitution as a document can keep growing and every individual can get the benefit out of that constitution. So constitutional morality refers to obeying the law for moral reasons as well as for the legal reasons. So here what we are understanding from this term constitutional morality is nothing but the enriching or adding the value to the protecting, respecting or adhering to the principle of the constitution, that is including the fundamental rights, directive principle or the fundamental duties. So every organ of the state and every individual as a citizen of India has to respect or has to protect those values of the constitution, and that is nothing but the constitutional morality. So for example, if it is a lawmakers or if it is a legislative organ, so when they are making the law, then constitution has given the power that yes, you can make the law, and on what subject you have to make the law, what is the requirement in the society, and what is the need of the time, what are the changes that has come into the society. So based on the research they will prepare a draft and they can enact the law. But while doing that, what they have to remember is that they shall not violate or they shall not breach or they shall not cross the boundaries that is laid down under these values of the constitutional morality. So constitutional morality is something that whatever the power that has been given to a particular organ, they shall not misuse or they shall not go beyond that power, and they shall respect that particular power that is given under the constitution. So similarly, if you go back to the administration, for example, so administrative authority has extensive power which are discretionary in nature. So when they are exercise their power which are discretionary in nature, wherein they have a choice, they have a freedom, they have a liberty to exercise their rights as which is mentioned or which is given by the law, and they can enjoy that discretionary powers. But while doing that also there is some limitation, while doing that also there is some restriction. They cannot exercise that power in whatever manner or in whatever like or dislike they have, whatever the personal belief or biases they have. No, they have a certain limitation, and that limitation is definitely a constitutional limitation they have, and somewhere this is again nothing but the constitutional morality that they have to remember. Again, if we go back to the judiciary, so judiciary, yes, it is their primary role to interpret the law for the adjudication or to resolve the disputes. But judiciary, again, if they are actively interpreting the law, that is again within the terms like judicial activism, if they are actively interpreting the law and that interpretation leads or that activism leads to some crossing of the boundaries, again that is not allowed. So constitution, yes, has given the authority to interpret the law, but again that has to be within the framework of the constitution, within that constitutional morality wherein one shall not encroach or one shall not cross that particular boundary. And similarly, as an individual, it is definitely a responsibility of every individual to respect the constitution and also to respect every law of the country. If they breach or if they do not adhere to the principle of this constitutional morality, again that becomes the that will bring disorder in the society, or that will bring some disorder not only in the society but also in the state. So in India, constitutional morality would include the values such as equality, justice and liberty, and the responsibility of upholding these values are incumbent on every citizen. So when each citizen vote in election or cast their votes in favor of certain member of legislation, they are upholding the constitutional morality. So for example, this is just an example wherein as a citizen, if you participate in the election or if you participate to cast the vote in the election, this is something again you are fulfilling your duty as a citizen of India, because ultimately when you are selecting any particular candidate from your constituency to who can represent maybe at the state legislature or maybe at the parliament to your own constituent or constituency, then definitely that will be helpful for yourself as well as your family and as well as your own constituent state, wherein that will bring certain changes. He can represent the parliament so that you can get certain benefits. So just casting a vote in the election, that is also something a duty, and that is also something you are respecting the constitutional morality, wherein the what constitution has laid down and what are the moral principle that is reflecting through the constitution, and one has to follow that moral principle, one has to stick to that moral principle, one has to respect that moral principle. This is nothing but the respecting the constitutional morality. So there is first time in the history wherein the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also has referred this particular definition of constitutional morality during the speech that is expressed in the Constituent Assembly debate while framing of the constitution. So according to the Grote, who has given this a small meaning, or you can say a brief meaning of the constitutional morality. However, this term constitutional morality is very vast and it will keep again growing, it will keep developing with the interpretation or with the need and time. But here Grote long back has given some observation about the constitutional morality. What he has mentioned that a paramount reverence for the forms of the constitution, enforcing obedience to the authority and acting under and within these forms, yet combined with the habit of open speech, of action subject only to definite legal control and unrestrained censure of those very authorities as to all their public acts combined, to with a public perfect confidence in the bosom of every citizen amidst the bitterness of party contest that forms of constitution will not be less sacred in the eyes of his opponents than his own. So this observation that is given by Grote on the constitutional morality is basically nothing but that emphasize. Here you can see that what points that you can learn from this definition is that what is the form of the constitution, further enforcing the obedience to the authorities and acting within these forms, and yet combined with the habit of open speech, action subject only to the definite legal control. So just in a simple words, if you understand this definition, that every organ of the state and the officials who are representing that organ of the state, and even the individual who are the getting benefit from the state and who are having the certain relation, or you can say certain communication with such state officials, then everyone has some freedom, everyone has some self control at the same time. So when the constitution has given you the freedom to exercise your right, to enjoy your rights, but at the same time one should have the self control, that one should exercise that right within the moral boundaries which has been set up by the constitutional. These boundaries might not have been written expressly in the constitution, or we will not get that express boundaries or limitation in the constitution, but as a judge, as a lawyer, or you can say as a legislative, as a lawmaking body, or as a administrative body, or as an individual, one has to understand that limit of that moral principle. So therefore the constitutional morality is based on two important principles, that is freedom and self control. So when you have a freedom, yes, you can enjoy as per your choice, as per the law, as per the restriction that is laid down in the law. So but at the same time self control, so that it shall not lead to any misuse, it shall not lead to any misuse or malified intention or something which is illegally applied that law to something. So that self control has to be there. And so the constitution has given you the freedom, the administrative authority has got the freedom in the form of discretion, but at the same time self control should be there, that it shall not be misused, it shall not be used for some personal use or maybe some personal benefit or for some malified function, etc. So the freedom as well as self control is a requirement for the proper operation of constitutional process, because if you just look at the from other way, if the constitution or law has been interpreted in very strict manner, if the judiciary also takes the provision of the constitution just as it is, the words mentioned in the statutes, without giving any scope of discretionary interpretation or without giving any scope of contemporary interpretation, then that will also not survive the purpose. So freedom has to be there, and at the same time self control also has to be there. So here Dr. Ambedkar's response to the criticism at the initial stage, or at the stage when the constituent was in the drafting stage, wherein he has referred this idea about constitutional morality, and basically he has talked about that how in consonance with the Grote definition of constitutional morality, as a framer of the constitution, what can be expected, what can be looked at for the future perspective. So one likes to ask whether there can be anything new in the constitution framed at this hour in the history of the world. The only new thing, if there can be any, in the constitution framed so late in the day are variations made to remove faults and to accommodate it to the needs of the country. The charge of producing a blind copy of the constitutions of other countries is based, I am sure, on inadequate study of the constitution. I have shown what is new in the draft constitution, and I am sure that those who have studied other constitutions and who are prepared to consider the matter dispassionately will agree that drafting committee is performing its duty, has not been guilty of such blind and slavish imitation as it is represented to be. So here the drafting committee in performing its duty has not been guilty of such blind and slavish imitation. So wherein the drafting committee, as you can see, wherein they had a freedom, they had a choice that how the constitution has to be framed, what shall be the structure of the constitution. So for that purpose they have taken several resources, they have referred other constitution which are already in present, which are already running in other countries, and also they have seen that what are the principles are there wherein there is no written constitution. So they have combined everything together, they adopted the relevant provisions in our constitution with the modification as per the need time of the country, and plus they have also make sure that this constitution shall be the document which shall be in a such a form that will be organic living document. So looking at this perspective, there was a freedom in the hand of constitutional makers, but also there was a self control that what shall be the principle that should be adopted while making the constitution, what shall be the articles that should be put up in the constitution. So this freedom and self control, that balance was there, because freedom was there to the provisions of the constitution of the other countries, but at the same time there was a self control that what should be taken, what are the good points that can be taken, on what are the points that should be removed. So here there is a Professor A.L. Goodhart, who is another very famous jurist. He has mentioned that the people as a whole and the parliament itself recognize that under the unwritten constitution there are certain established principles which limit the scope of parliament. Here read carefully that under the unwritten constitution we are talking about, there are certain principles which limit the scope of parliament. It is true that the courts cannot enforce these principles as they can under the federal system in the United States, but this does not mean that these principles are in any the less binding and effective. So here if we talk about the country like UK, there is a parliamentary sovereignty, and also the country that governs mostly on the constitutional conventions, wherein there are certain practices that is established by the code, by the legal system, and that constitutional conventions has the equal status like the constitution of like country like India. So constitutional convention, however, they might not have been written, but these practices which has been followed, these practices which has been set up in the country like UK, that becomes mandatory and that becomes something binding and effective. So therefore in the Delhi High Court in the year 2009, Nas Foundation versus Government of NCT Delhi invoked this principle of constitutional morality by asserting the urgency of decriminalizing consensual sexual relation prescribed by section 377. So after the Dr. Ambedkar's reference to the constitutional morality, there were several instances this term some or other way that was referred, but here the Nas Foundation versus Government of India after 2019, after 2009, this concept of constitutional morality got some more importance, and that brought to the before the judges for such interpretation as and when it is needed. So some of the elements of constitutional morality are nothing but the first, rule of law, right to equality, social justice, due process of law, and individual liberty and freedom of expression. Now these principles, as you know that we are well versed such titles and such concept, but how they are connected with the constitutional morality and how they are part and parcel of constitutional morality, then number one, like rule of law, when we talk about rule of law as it is in consonance with the article 14 of the constitution, that is nothing but again right to equality. If it's seen this both together, then obviously law will be supreme, So whenever any authority or any individual or any organs of the state, when they are exercising their power, they have to remember that law is supreme. Law shall be supreme all the time. And accordingly, when the law is supreme, then in that situation, when law is supreme, then we have to remember is that everything will come under the law. So therefore, that freedom is there to enjoy the right from the moment you get the chance to exercise the right till the boundary that has been set up by the law. And the self control has to be there, that this boundary is something that should not be crossed. Similarly, the due process of law, wherein the, like for example, in the case of Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, when the passport authority, when they confiscated the passport of Maneka Gandhi, then in that case, wherein the passport authority had a right to exercise the right as per the Passport Authority Act, but how to exercise that right? You have a freedom, you have a discretion to confiscate the passport, but how that right can be exercised, whether that power which is mentioned under this due process of law, that what should be the process, whether the procedure established by law which is mentioned under Article 21 and the procedure established by law that is under the Passport Authority Act, wherein the procedure established by law is such that one can confiscate the passport, but that procedure has to be due. That is, due is nothing but just, fair and reasonable, and this is nothing but the balance between freedom and the self control, and that is nothing but the achievement of, or you can say you are achieving the goal of the constitutional morality. Then there is individual liberty and freedom of expression. Again, it is something wherein the one individual has the right to express his opinion, express his views, but at the same time that individual has to understand the limit, has to understand the limits, maybe the which is mentioned under the Article 19(2) of the reasonable restriction of the fundamental speech and expression. Otherwise, that will lead to the crossing the boundaries. So here in this, on this particular point, there are certain judgments wherein the court has referred this principle and court has given their views on this constitutional morality. So in the case of Manoj Narula versus Union of India, wherein the Chief Justice of India has mentioned that the principle of constitutional morality is basically mean to bow down the norms of the constitution and not to act in a manner which would become violative of rule of law or reflectable of action in arbitrary manner. The traditions and conventions have to grow to sustain the value of such morality. The democratic values survive and become successful where the people at large and person in charge of institutions are strictly guided by the constitutional parameters without paving the path of deviancy and reflecting in action the primary concern to maintain institutional integrity and the requisite constitutional restraints. Commitment to the constitution is a facet of constitutional morality. Further, in the case of government of NCT versus NCT of Delhi versus Union of India, wherein the Justice Deepak Mishra also has given a very apt observation in terms when it comes to the constitutional morality. He has mentioned that constitutional morality, appositely understood, means the morality that has inherent elements in the constitutional norms and the conscience of the constitution. Any act to garner justification must possess the potentiality to be in harmony with the constitutional impulse. We may give an example. When one is expressing the idea of generosity, he may not be meeting the standard of justness. There may be an element of condensation, but when one shows justness in action, there is no feeling of any grant or generosity. That will come within the normative value. That is the test of constitutional justness, which falls within the sweep of constitutional morality. It advocates the principle of constitutional justness without subjective exposition of generosity. So, constitutional justness is something that one has to understand from the principle, maybe how the one has acted in a fair, just, reasonable with his observation, with his act of action, or you can say with his act of words, whether it is bringing that respect towards the morality. Then we have another case, that is Indian Young Lawyers Association versus the state of Kerala, that is famously known as Sabarimala case, wherein the Supreme Court ruled that exclusion of women between the ages of 10 to 15 years from the Sabarimala temple violates the four key principles of constitutional morality, that is justice, liberty, equality and fraternity. The court observed that the term morality in Article 25 and 26 of the Constitution refers to constitutional morality rather than popular morality. So here there is one important para in this judgment, that is para 145, which states that there is a two concepts, that is popular morality and constitutional morality. So thus popular morality or a public disapproval of certain acts is not valid justification for restriction of the fundamental rights of under Article 21. The popular morality as distinct from constitutional morality as derived from the constitutional values, that is constitutional morality as derived from the constitutional values based on the shifting and subjecting notions of right and wrong. If there is any type of morality that can pass the test compelling the state interest, then it shall be the constitutional morality, because popular morality may not have the long term effect or may not be accepted for the long term, but the constitutional morality will pass the test all the time. There was another landmark case, Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India, wherein in the year 2019 certain guidelines were issued in public interest by the Civil Secretariat to shut down the internet and other essential in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So Ms. Anuradha Bhasin filed a petition, as she was executive editor in the Kashmir Times Srinagar edition, who argued that internet to be essential for modern press, and the petitioner pointed out that the print media could be come to an end without internet, since the newspaper had not been published from last few days, that is from 6th August 2019. The court declared that internet to be essential in today's life, and thereby freedom of speech and expression and freedom to practice any profession, occupation or trade on the internet is a part of fundamental right under part 3 of the Constitution. The court imposes limitation on the power of government to issue an imposing blanket ban on the internet service. So if the government is exercising their power in such a manner, then that is something violating the principle of constitutional morality by not keeping the freedom in a, or not exercising freedom in a correct manner. Also, there is one good observation by Justice Hidayatullah in his book, that is Judges Miscellany. He has mentioned that every judge has a distinct stream of tendency in him, since he sees things with his own eyes. Their work on his mind, all those imponderable influences built round himself in life's experience. He may not be aware of the influences, but they are there. For example, one may have a rooted antipathy to certain crimes, another may shape at the controls put upon the individual, and the third may have a great regard for law and its observance. And so it goes on individual to individual. The tendency of judges are as varied as the colors of an artist. There are also various approaches and methods for viewing legal problems. One judge may be influenced by the one approach more than another. There is one more important recent development which has taken place, that is interpretation of rape laws, and wherein the character of victims is no longer relevant, and there is now a presumption of no consent in cases where sexual intercourse has been established and the victim has stated the court that she did not consent. And this new amendment clarifies that the consent is an unequivocal agreement to engage in a specific sexual act. It also explains the consent does not entail the resistance. So in the conclusion, I would like to state that this transformative approach basically has inculcated judiciary towards the changing nature of society. The Constitution of India is having a continuity in its application, and the change in the objective, that is from conservative to modern approach, that we have discussed, and this impact and the influential factors such as the innovative interpretation of the text of Constitution, expansion, fundamental rights, judicial activism, creativity, and that builds the relationship between the court and legislature and also the administrative authority within the framework of this transformation, and also the significance of the constitutional morality within the two barriers, that is freedom and self-control, that needs to be recognized, and we need to understand as a citizen of India. So with this I conclude my lecture on this contemporary principle of interpretation of statutes. There are other things also can be included here as time and can say changes that comes into the interpretation also in the society. So this is all about the contemporary principles of interpretation. So I thank you all the viewers for listening to this lecture. Thank you.